Mishka, that was so deep and moving and challenging and appropriate for this occasion. We're very, very grateful, and you're welcome to come back to my office anytime. So we've come to the almost end of a remarkable evening together. I want to ask you first to join me in thanking the staff who made this possible, starting with Jane Rosengarten and her remarkable team. If you just stand wherever you are, this happens not by magic, but by a lot of hard work. One more round of applause for our honorees, Jim McCann, Doug Wood, representing the Ford Foundation, and Mariska Hargitay. And if the spirit moves you after the evening, I want to invite you out to the Jaywalk. See those open doors out there for dessert and coffee. So here's a little story about the Jaywalk. When Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill designed this wonderful building, they created a commons. And it was called that on the architectural plan, the Commons. And another architectural plan said that maybe this was the plaza. Somebody else on my staff said, well, we should have a quad, like Yale has a quad. And so we decided the way to resolve this naming question was to ask the students, what should they call it? Vote among those three options or give me another better choice. And one of our students on the first day of this three-day election said, it is the Jaywalk. So that's the Jaywalk. No one else has a Jaywalk. We have a Jaywalk. So please enjoy the Jaywalk. But I just want to share some thoughts. I mean, this is a remarkable moment in the life of this college. It's 50 years. We were founded at a time of profound national turmoil in 1964. We actually had that debate. So there were presidential commissions talking about the urban unrest, about the racial divide, about tension between police and communities of color. Does any of that sound familiar? About the need to improve our response to crime, to do something for the men and women who are called to service to be law enforcement officers, to do something about prisons and the role of the criminal justice system. All of that was a new discussion in the mid-1960s. And as part of that discussion, this city, our university, decided to heed the call of those presidential commissions and to create a college. Not a department, not part of sociology, not part of some other discipline, but an entire liberal arts college devoted to the study of justice. That's what happened during a time of national turmoil. Now, 50 years later, we look back and we realize that those were very prescient decisions. I honor the people. We all should honor the people who sat in those rooms in the police department and the City University of New York and said, let's create a college. Originally called the College of Police Science, now called John Jay, but let's create a liberal arts institution. Because what we know is the people who do this hard work on behalf of our country, what they need is a good education. That decision, almost upended by the fiscal crisis when this college almost went under, that decision resonates today. 55,000 alumni. In this room, Commissioner Bratton and I welcomed the people who now work at the police department or alumni of John Jay who have worked at the police department. 5,000 John Jay alumni have gone to work in our police department. And we have people spread around the world. We have judges, we have lawyers, we have forensic scientists, we have doctors. They came here because they were highly motivated to get an education. They came here, working class students, immigrant students. Today our students are 3/4 students of color, 40% of them born in another country, 1/3 of them speaking a language other than English at home, almost 50% of them the first in their family to go to college. This is the dream of the City University of New York. This is our dream. So my thought, and I want to share it with you, sitting here tonight, is that 50 years later, now more than ever is our time. Look at what's happening around our country. There is this in the middle of all of this turmoil about policing and awful situations of men being killed by police officers, in the middle of that turmoil, in the middle of the very depressing realities of mass incarceration, there is this optimism that we can do things better. Not just a little better, but a lot better. And that's what keeps so many of us going every day. So as you think about finishing your conversations and moving on to the jaywalk, here's the thought I want you to keep in mind. Now is our time. Now is the time for this institution to do things for the country that we were formed to do. Now is the time for those 15,000 students who come here to study, many of them poor, many of them struggling, many of them trying to figure it out, young people who don't know what college means because no one in their family went to college before them. Now is our time to help them figure out their life path, to help them get a good education provided by our first-rate faculty, to provide them the financial support they need, to provide them the career opportunities they need, to help them think about law school, PhD programs, medical school, or to become, like our president, a community organizer. Who knows? Now is our time to help them. Now is our time to help the cities that are struggling with still way too much violence, deeply embedded violence. We have people here, we have professors here who are working on this around the country. They need support, but now is our time to help make that a reality that levels of violence can be reduced and we can live in safety. Now is our time to think about those police officers who respond selflessly, bravely, taking their lives in their hands as they do the hard work of law enforcement. We need to help them be ready to answer that call and those calls every day. Now is the time for us to think, as Mariska has challenged us to do, about those victims and survivors who are struggling to find their way back to a life that they were intended to have that has been disrupted sometimes brutally by the crime that they suffered. They're struggling to recover. They're hungry for some version of justice that we don't give them. Now is the time for us to think about those prisoners who, as we stand here, are sitting in cells far away, wondering, where's justice for me? How do I think about the life that, since most of them return home, the life that awaits me when I return home to family and community? How do we help prepare them for that inevitable return home? Now is the time to think about them as well. Now is the time for us to think about countries far away. We have worked all over the globe now by the global John Jay that we don't talk about much, but I'm going to China for 10 days to talk to our university partners in Beijing and Taiwan who are interested in learning from us about how to develop democratic policing styles and how to work on, to avoid false confessions. I participated in this conference on the death penalty in Beijing. It was remarkable. They wanted to talk to us. So now is the time to think about them and to think about what we can learn from them as well. It's not only a one-way street, it's a two-way street. And now, in particular, I think it's the time for us to recognize that the work on racial justice is far from over, and that this college, you heard about the initiative that we are sponsoring here with the help of the Justice Department. You heard about work we're doing in many of our research centers. We're everywhere on the issue of race and justice and policing and violence. And now is the time for us really to think deeply about the legacy of the African people in this country, those who trace their lineage not to the immigrant story but to the slavery story, who are still trying to figure out what citizenship means in this country, and how does the era of mass incarceration impact the lifetime of a young black man who has a 1 in 3 chance of spending a year in prison in his life? How does the interaction day to day with police that's so heightened in too many cities around the country affect the relationship between those young individuals and the police? And how do we start to think about a process of making things right, of recognizing harms done over the years, and to think about a process of racial reconciliation that will, for once and ever, bring us to a point where we really have some justice. In addition to the criminal justice, we have some justice that addresses that legacy. So as I stand here tonight, and thank you all for coming, and really inspired by Mariska to go deeper than the traditional closing of a gala, I really think that now is the time for us to do the work that you asked us to do, to find in whatever pocket of our soul is the place where we have that thing called justice, to find out what we're going to do after tonight. We are so grateful to all of you for coming, for being part of this grand experiment called John Jay, for believing in us, for believing in our students, for believing in the way that we have defined justice, which is as big as it can be, and for believing in the promise of this unique public institution to do public good. Enjoy the Jaywalk. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to our honorees.